So you know what we do when we've got two curves, we put them together and we look at where they cross. But just remember, these are very different curves than your micro curves. And so therefore, that whole excess demand, excess supply adjustment thing, that doesn't work. So we have to start thinking differently about what's happening here when I look at these curves and I put them together. So the price level, measured either as the consumer price index or the GDP deflator, is the overall aggregate level of prices in the economy. Y is the real GDP. It's measured in terms of real total actual output. So for example, when I say that output goes up, I don't just mean that the nominal value of output went up because I'm measuring everything with higher prices. I mean, I'm actually producing more physical stuff. The maximum level of physical stuff, of real GDP, of total value of all my goods and services that I can produce as an economy, in an economy, is set by my resources and my capital, right? Land, labor, capital, given technology, and that sets the maximum that I can produce. You might remember that we saw this when we looked at the production possibility frontier, and while I wasn't looking at where I'm on the PPF itself essentially sets the maximum that I can produce. Growth will be reflected by an actual outward shift of the PPF or an actual outward shift of this long run output level, which can't go up unless I have an actual increase in my production capacities, in my resources, in my technology. In the short run, my aggregate supply curve looks like that. At lower prices, I produce less. At higher prices, I produce more. This is not for the conventional reasons. This is because I have sticky wages, and that means that I can actually see some output responses as a result of price changes. Eventually, I assume that wages will catch up. And as wages start catching up, this curve will start shifting, which in turn will mean that I'll end up here, but with higher prices. The aggregate demand curve reflects equilibrium levels of real GDP as shown in the income expenditure model, and it slopes down because we anticipate that we might see wealth effects or policies that are undertaken by the Federal Reserve because of inflation targeting that can essentially give us a downward sloping curve. In the short run, it looks like I might have that as my combination of price levels and output levels. The argument is that if that's what's going on, then over time, because I have unused capacity, input prices will start to drop and firms will be able to bump out production until I come here. So essentially, the reactions have to do with changes in wealth effects and changes in the relative price of inputs, particularly labor, but not just labor, in relation to outputs, going back to that idea of where am I producing in relation to maximum capacity. So with that in mind, it means that having a further understanding of the relationship between interest, employment, and money means that we now finally have to look at the input markets, because it is in the input markets that distance between how much I'm producing and what my maximum production is, and it's through the sticky wages and through those type of effects on the one hand, and through interest rate effects which are set in money markets, the ability of stock and bond price changes to change interest rates and therefore affect firms' planned investment decisions on the other side, those two things are going to start converging in order to give us a picture of where we end up. So the final piece of thinking through this whole story is to look at input markets. Thank you.